We see so many people here today, so many faces, all the different colors of our Mother Earth. All the nations are here today with us, and it's good to see that, because we're all from our Mother. We all come from ancient people, and that's good to see everybody. I'm going to go ahead and invite Nancy Miller. Is Nancy Miller here from the Cherokee Nation? Please welcome Nancy. OCM.
I'm Nancy K. Miller. I'm a citizen of the Cherokee Nation. I've been asked to say a few words on behalf of the Cherokees in our region. First, I would like to thank you, Wado, to all of you for coming here today to stand up for Veronica Brown's right to grow up and live as a Cherokee among the Cherokees in the heart of the Cherokee Nation. Every one of us Cherokees, I believe without exception, holds Veronica dear, as we do all of our children, as I know you do too. Our children are our future, the ones who keep our identity as Indian peoples alive into the future. The legacy we receive from our Indian ancestors lives on through our children. Now, Veronica Brown's adoption case is a complicated mess, as you may have heard. But I am strongly optimistic that the trials this little girl and her family are going through will result in good outcomes that will benefit everyone. What this battle is coming down to is a test of tribal sovereignty, weighing the authority of the Cherokee Nation Supreme Court against the South Carolina Supreme Court and the Supreme Court of the United States. One thing I can tell you for sure about Cherokees is that we arrive at court battle fully armed and ready to fight. Law is extremely important to us, and it always has been, from ancient times. I don't know if there's another people in the world, anywhere, who engage in as much legal argument and litigation as Cherokees do. It's just in our nation. We'll take anybody to court if we can't find somebody to do with each other. You can count on Cherokees to stand our ground against threats to the sovereign authority of our nation, to protect our Cherokee children and their own Cherokee homes, and we will fight for you too, as we fight for ourselves. The Cherokee Nation is well equipped and fully capable of taking on South Carolina Supreme Court and even the Supreme Court of the United States. Veronica Brown is going to win this. We are going to win this. Veronica Brown wins. Everyone wins. Everyone will benefit from the outcome of this battle. Veronica will benefit by growing up and living as a Cherokee woman in the true Cherokee Nation. The Cherokee Nation will benefit by being brought together and strengthened. American Indians everywhere will benefit from the affirmation of our tribal sovereignty, the authority of our tribal courts, and the authority of the Indian Child Welfare Act. We will all benefit. The United States benefits culturally, ecologically, and economically from the presence of our strong, healthy tribal nations within its borders, and the whole world benefits from the healthy United States. We'll all benefit. Even the opposite, that couple who wanted to adopt Veronica can't benefit if they allow themselves to. This is an opportunity for them to do the right thing, to show genuine love for Veronica, to be happy for her, and then adopt another child who really does need a family. So today, let our hearts be filled with hope and promise for the bright future Veronica Brown represents. Let our hearts not be burdened with bitterness and fear and anger. We have so much to look forward to as we continue revitalizing our Indian nation. Today is a good day to stand up and look forward. Photo.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your words. And today, that's right, we have a chance to come together. We have a chance to be one people upon our Mother Earth. It's a beautiful day to be Indigenous, eh? It's a beautiful day to be alive, to be a human being upon Mother Earth, that we have a chance to learn how to become a true human being. All of us are relearning this, I feel. So it's a good day. Thank you. And we're going to go ahead and invite Nicole Adams here, the National Child Welfare. You can see him.
I'm going to try to talk as loud as I possibly can, so if it sounds like I'm screaming at you, apologies. My name is Nicole Adams. I work with the National Indian Child Welfare Association in Portland, and we've been working with the Brown family, the Cherokee Nation, partner organizations such as the National Congress of American Indians and the Native American Rights Fund for over a year and a half on this case. So I want to thank you for the invitation on behalf of my staff and the board of the National Indian Child Welfare Association to the invitation to come and speak today. We really appreciate this outpouring of support. So there's never been a time when threats to the laws that protect Native children have loomed so large. You've read the ill-informed headlines that call the Indian Child Welfare Act an antiquated and possibly racist law that needs changing. You've seen how those with resources and connections to the highest courts, to the best lawyers, and a full-service public relations firms have been able to dictate the national conversation on this case. You've heard them, and you've heard them argue what they perceive is in Veronica's best interest, and by extrapolation for our Native children writ large. You've heard their voices out there advocating that the laws protecting our children be relaxed so that tribes' ability to intervene on behalf of their own children, their ability should be weakened. You've heard those voices out there. And you've undoubtedly heard that our children need to be saved by those who diminish the value of our traditions and our culture with their opinions of blood quantum and sovereignty. Those people call for a return to the pre-ICWA era. Prior to 1978, 1 in 3 Indian children was removed from their homes, and most were placed away from their homes and their communities and their culture. This is the time that they want to return us back to, and I say not on our watch. Still, it is not enough to be outraged. We must mobilize and we must act. There is power in our collective action. And you know how I know this? Because I've seen it in play. I've seen it what happened with the Supreme Court in adoptive couple versus baby girl. According to the original brief filed by the attorneys for the adoptive couple, their early goal was the complete and total dismantling of the Indian Child Welfare Act and attacking the very foundation of all federal Indian law. Everything. That's right. They were out to challenge the constitutionality of the laws that protect our tribal sovereignty. But with the support of people just like you, NICWA effectively mobilized an expansive array of supporters. Within the span of less than 3 weeks, 393 Indian tribes, Alaska Native villages and corporations, Native organizations and tribal consortia, 19 states, 17 current and former members of Congress, 18 national child welfare and children's rights organizations, national psychological associations, religious organizations, adult adoptees, and legal scholars, and the United States of America all mobilized almost instantaneously to file supporting amicus briefs on behalf of baby girl. We know, because we heard from many people, that was because of people just like you. All of the phone calls that you made that happen. So although we lost a very close 5-4 decision with the U.S. Supreme Court, legal analysts have told us that it was the mobilization of these amicus briefs that forced the other side to abandon their original goals. As a result, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled only on the most narrow questions put before them. ICWA is still the law of the land. In other words, you helped us save ICWA. Now, as this case finds its way towards resolution in the Oklahoma courts, we must continue to be proactive and continue to fight to keep our children safe and in loving homes. So what does this mean? It means that we need to be better at educating those outside of Indian country on the importance of ICWA. We need to not just be talking amongst ourselves about the shameful practices that led to the passage of ICWA, but to those who shape the national dialogue and shape policy on these issues. Continue to call, write, email the media. I can tell you from recent experience with the Today Show that they are not accustomed to hearing from Indian country. They are not accustomed to having their switchboards light up from us when we demand their accountability, and that the Native perspective on these issues that deal with our children and our families and our communities be included in their coverage. So we need to keep calling the Dr. Phil and the Anderson Coopers and the producers. But we also can be reaching out to individual reporters and writing letters to the editor to share positive stories on how ICWA has kept our families intact for the better and why culture really matters. It also means that we need to hold ourselves accountable within our own communities to take care of our children. We must demand from tribal leaders that our programs adhere to the strongest standards and follow best practices because our children deserve no less. We must ask ourselves if we as individuals are willing to become a foster parent to give a loving home to a child in need. It means that we need to be in touch with our policymakers to inform them not just about the civil rights violations that happened when the Supreme Court of South Carolina took the unfathomable, unheard of, unprecedented step of forbidding a hearing to discuss the best interest of Veronica now. So we would also share with policymakers the good that comes from the Indian Child Welfare Act. How many families has it saved? It is clear that the opponents of ICWA are not content to hurt just one Indian family by dismantling the laws that protect our most vulnerable citizens. They want nothing short of the repeal of ICWA itself. We can't let this happen, and with your help, we won't let this happen. With your help, the National Indian Child Welfare Association will continue our work to partner with Congress and our allies on Capitol Hill to close the loophole created by the Supreme Court decision. We will reach out to state legislators to urge the passage of stronger state tribal child welfare laws with added protections for children, parents, families, and fathers. We will call for the investigation of unscrupulous adoption practices that continue to result in the breakup of untold numbers of Indian families. And we will continue to question why, on this year, in the 35th year since the passage of the Indian Child Welfare Act, why is there still no one federal agency that is in charge with enforcing it and making sure that people are complying with it? We will not be dissuaded from our important work by those out there who brazenly wish to return to a time before ICWA. We will not stand idly by as our children's safety, happiness, and well-being is being attacked. So, on my way up from Portland this morning, a friend of mine called me and gave me a little pep talk. And he said, "Remember, Nicole, the truth will set you free." And that really resonated with me because I realized that gatherings like this today and the reason that this case has touched us so deeply in places in our hearts, in our spirits, like nothing that I've seen in Indian country before. It's because we know what the truth of this matter is. We know the truth of what happens to children like Veronica when they are forcibly removed from their loving homes and their families. We know the truth of what happens to Indian families and the decimation of Indian communities that happens when there are no laws to protect our children. And we know the truth behind the painful and arduous journey that happens when the Veronicas of this world grow up and try to find their ways back home. And that's the truth that we know, because we know we don't have to look very far into our history books. We don't have to look farther than our own individual families to know that this is a truth that we all share. And that's why I believe that we're here today. I want to say also just that prior to our prayer gathering on the steps of the U.S. Supreme Court at the end of, or in mid-April, where Dustin and Robin participated, I can tell you they had no idea that Indian country stood with them. You can tell from Dustin trying to keep his daughter's privacy in a low profile over the last year and a half that he tried to shy away from the spotlight. And so before April, Dustin thought he and his family were completely alone in this matter. And so I just want to say that it heartens me to see so many young people here, so many families here. I want to thank you on behalf of the National Indian Child Welfare Association for your continued support, for your continued willingness to speak these truths, and for your prayers for Dustin and Robin and Veronica and Alice tonight. So thank you very, very much.
Right here, Nicole Adams. So much good words. You know, it's true. When they do take our children away, my mom lived through that generation where they were kidnapping children and they were taking them away. And she was lucky, you know, because her brothers went to the residential school. They got kidnapped. They got taken away to Cooper Island. She managed to get to that island with her father because my grandfather, he made power boats, put Model T engines in power boats. He made it to Cooper Island. He went there. And my mom saw her brothers and heard those stories, horror stories, firsthand of terrible things that happened to them. They never left that island. 4 of my uncles died at Cooper Island. It's called genocide. And when we allow our children to be taken away from the native family, well, the government knew that if they take the child and they take them away from the beautiful teachings of the elders and abuse them, then they will only have teachings of abuse. And they will no longer be who they are. They will no longer have their roots as a native person. It's the same thing if we allow our children to be taken today away from our native families. It's the same thing. And so I'm so happy to hear these words of wisdom from these people who are doing this work, who are investing so much time and energy in doing this work. Thank you, Honorable One. I want to invite Sacred Water, drum, to come here and keep the energy moving. We're going to bring it up here with a song. Like they're having a powwow, maybe. Sacred Water. LNEK. There was no number there. I go by numbers. That's as loud as it gets. You've got to get on there.
Thank you. Okay, I want to make sure that you can hear me. Okay, all right. My name is Elani Casey, and I am of the Cherokee Nation, Raven Clan. And, all right. I'm from Seattle, and my dad was sent to a boarding school from Alaska into Washington State in Sumas, and he was sent to a Catholic school called the Black Rose. And he was not allowed to speak his language, the Tlingit language. And so when I grew up, when I asked him about our culture, he was too afraid to speak about the culture. So I spent my entire life singing, dancing, and drumming and learning everything I can. I was the Indian Child Welfare Advisory Committee chairperson for DSHS in the Indian Unit in Region 2 back in the day. And I staffed over 100 foster care cases with Indian children. And the reason I'm here is to give a really brief overview of the Indian Child Welfare Act itself. I promise not to go too long, because I know time is of the essence. I just want to say that the Indian Child Welfare Act recognizes that there is a government-to-government relationship between the United States and the tribe. This law was passed November 11, 1978, and affirms the special political relationship that we have with the United States and is not based on race or ethnic factors. The purpose of the Indian Child Welfare Act is to protect the best interests of Indian children and to promote the stability and security of Indian tribes and families by the establishment of minimum federal standards for the removal of Indian children and placement of such children in homes which will reflect the unique values of Indian culture. Also, the Indian Child Welfare Act regulates states regarding the handling of children, child abuse and neglect and adoption cases involving Native children. It sets minimum standards for the handling of those cases. It affirms the right of tribal courts to adjudicate child abuse and neglect and adoption cases involving children on the reservation. It establishes a preference for tribal courts to adjudicate child abuse and neglect cases in situations of concurrent jurisdiction. And it affirms and supports tribal jurisdiction and child welfare proceedings. So it is the law of the land. It is important that it be followed. And there are consequences if it is not followed. It is to support Native child rights. The rights are to tribal identity and entitlement, not to have families broken up, to be placed with a Native family and to have information regarding the child's tribal identity protected and preserved. The tribe's rights are to receive notice of a child custody proceeding involving an Indian child, to intervene at any time until the case is dismissed, to request transfer of jurisdiction to tribal court from state court, to get records, to establish child welfare programs, to petition the Secretary of Interior for resumption of jurisdiction, to full faith and credit from federal and state courts for any child custody proceeding and tribal courts, and to support the parent Indian or custodial rights, and to designate an Indian custodian when there has the same rights as the parent under the Indian Child Welfare Act. And regarding placement, there is no placement away from the biological parents, adoptive parents, or Indian custodian can be made without active efforts to preserve the family through remedial and rehabilitative services designated to prevent the breakup of Indian families, and clear and convincing evidence that continued custody by the parents or Indian custody is likely to result in serious emotional or physical damage to the child. A qualified expert witness is required to establish the clear and convincing standards, the social and cultural standards of Indian communities in which the parent or extended family resides, must be applied in places. And with that, I want to end this with a very brief welcoming song from my Winged Trust. I sing it 4 times, each for the 4 directions. And it is a welcoming song. And when I sing, I wish for you to stand and hand your hands this way, because we are here as friends and as relatives to each other. Way, 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 ah, hey, way, 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 ah, hey, ah, way, ah, hey, way, ah, hey, way, 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 ah, hey, way, 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 ah, hey, way, ah, hey, way, ah, hey, 3rd time, way, 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 ah, hey, way, 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 ah, hey, way, ah, hey, way, ah, hey, last time, way, 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 ah, hey, way, 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 ah, hey, way, ah, hey, way, ah, hey.
Peter Foster here. So calling me tribe. Deal with that.
Yes, thank you. As an ally and as somebody who's worked in Indian land for 15 years, children are still being removed at an astronomical rate. And I have to say, 2% of the population, that is what natives are in Washington State. There's nearly 9% of the children in care. And most of those children are in non-native homes. And that's when they lose their culture. And as this elder stated, children need to know who they are, what they are, and where they come from. Otherwise, we see the result 13, 14, 15 years later in suicide, drugs, alcohol, and loss of who they are. And we must change this. And it is up to every one of you to find families that can take the children that are being taken from families whose parents were taken to boarding schools. We have to stop this. We have to stop it. It goes on, and it is time to stop. And I am a recruiter for foster homes, and if you're interested, the Maumee tribe does license in Kings, Snohomish, Thurston, and Mason counties and islands. United Indians licenses throughout the state, and Muckleshoot also licenses. I do not trust the state of Washington at this point. I used to work in the Indian unit where something like 70% of the workers were native, and now they have 1 worker left. That's in Kings County. Anyway, thank you very much, and I do have brochures if you're interested.
Thank you. Thank you. Very good. Wonderful. And, let's keep things flowing here. We're on a schedule. Indian time is a schedule too. But Lisa Powers, I'd like to invite Lisa Powers here to share some of her medicine with us. Words, as you can see them.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here, and thank you, Bergen, for those wonderful words about the state. I'm a state worker. I'm one of those people she doesn't trust. My sister, but I guess she doesn't trust me. But anyway, you've heard a lot of information about the Indian Child Welfare Act. And I see on the sign that it talks about, you know, our children, our Native children are not for sale, and that's the truth. But the other truth is we're losing our children because we do not have enough placement, enough Native homes to put our Native children in. So we are giving our children away. We don't have homes. We don't have, you know, good, clean, sober, stable people to take these children. So we have no choice. They get placed in non-Native homes, and then they get either adopted or go into guardianship. We're giving our Native children away. And then nobody cares about what happens to those children. No one's there to say, I'll take you to a powwow, I'll teach you a song, I'll help you make regalia, I'll help you learn your songs and your dances. No one's there. Those non-Native parents are on their own. We have no mentors. So, you know, Burgess is here, United Indians stated that they are also a licensed placing agency. We need more people to stand up. If you care about what's happening to our Native children, you have to step up. You have to be willing to become one of those parents to take these children into care, because we have way more children in care than we have homes. So we are obligated to find a home, and they go to non-Native homes. And thank God, you know, bless those people for raising our children. We're not stepping up. We're not taking them into our home. What are we going to do with them? We can't put them on the street. So please, either find the relative, find someone in your community to take these children, or they're going to go to non-Native homes. And they're going to be either adopted or they're going to go into guardianship. And then we lose them. Unless we make allies out of them. We embrace these families and bring them into our communities. We can't raise the children in our own homes. Let's embrace those families who are. Let's bring them in and let's make them feel welcome. Let's honor them. Let's give them the benefit of raising our children in a good way as a part of our community. So there's nothing else more to say. We need to honor those children. We need to respect them, and we need to protect them. So we need to step up. If they can't be with their parents for whatever reason, the parents aren't able to parent them, somebody's got to step up and say, I'll take that child. I'll raise that child until they can go home, or I'll raise that child until they grow up. Otherwise, they're going into non-Native homes. There's no other choice. So, you know, I'm hoping that some of you will think about opening your hearts and opening your homes. Burgess can license you to Snoqualmie Tribe. I can license you through the dreaded state. So, you know, there's lots of ways to do this, but if we're warriors who are out there to protect those children, you got to bring them into your home. You got to stand up and be willing to be a home for these children, or we're going to lose them. They're not going to get stolen. We're just going to give them away.
OCM. HCM. Good to hear words. These people are doing so much good work. And that's what we're doing here. Working for the future generations of our children. That's right. That they have a home. That they have a family to be raised with. That they have the ancient teachings of our old elders, our old people, that carry so much beauty and wisdom for us. I'm so happy they're doing this work. So we're going to go ahead and move into the jam time. Anybody with a drum, please come up and help us. Sacred waters, please come forward. Share.